You don't need $1 million for life to feel different. The first net worth that actually changes your day-to-day is far smaller, around $100K, and it rewires how you handle fear and decisions. Hit that mark and fragility shifts to stability. In the next few minutes, I'll show you why this number flips your brain from panic to patience. We'll break down the exact milestone where emergencies shrink from disasters to inconveniences, where compounding quietly starts helping, and where you stop living at the edge. If you've been grinding without feeling safer, you're closer than you think. Stay with me to see why late fees stop feeling like traps and how to reach that sooner. Let's get into the scarcity switch, why your brain calms down at 100K. There's a point where your mind stops bracing for impact. That point isn't a mansion or a lottery ticket. It's a net worth level where the noise drops and your decisions get cleaner because your mind finally has space to think past Friday. Money stress doesn't come from being broke. It comes from never feeling like there's enough. That's the engine behind the constant tension. Let's break it down. Scarcity mindset is simple. Your attention lives on the nearest threat. You scan for risks. You think in days instead of months, and every choice drains you. Constant money vigilance hogs working memory, so even small tasks feel heavier. It's not laziness, it's bandwidth getting chewed up by what-ifs, and that turns routine decisions into a grind. So you get a raise, and somehow you don't feel safer. The bills are covered, but your brain still runs hot. That happens because the perceived threats scale with you. From rent to repairs, from groceries to medical bills, from getting by to saving for a house. You're still juggling, just with nicer balls, and anxiety doesn't respect your new salary. The research is clear. Scarcity narrows focus onto the urgent, which pushes reactive choices. At around 100K, that constant hum finally starts to fade. This is the beginning of the shift where money stops being a source of anxiety and starts becoming a quiet form of security. Behavioral science explains this. Scarcity compresses time horizons and nudges you toward fast relief over long-term payoff. You become less future-oriented because tomorrow looks risky and expensive. Your options might be fine on paper, but your head defaults to solving the next 5 minutes. So you delay maintenance, skip investing, and say yes to quick fixes that keep you stuck. Here's the link to personal finance. When every expense competes with rent or debt, patience becomes expensive. You can't float a deductible without stress. You avoid smart risks, not because they're bad, but because you can't afford a misstep. The result is a loop. Survival mode blocks the very moves that end survival mode. Now put two identical people side by side. One has $5,000 to their name, one has $100,000. Both get a $1,200 car repair. In the first 48 hours, the $5,000 person scrambles. They consider a credit card with a high APR, push the utility bill, Uber to work, and cancel a shift to deal with the shop. Their plan changes 3 times, and each change adds fees and stress. The $100,000 person books the repair, uses cash from a buffer, switches to public transit for 2 days, and reschedules a non-essential expense next week. Same problem, different cognitive load. Research shows that financial strain eats cognitive bandwidth and maps to more impulsive choices and weaker risk assessment. Under scarcity, mental load rises and future thinking falls. That's why the difference isn't taste or discipline. It's slack. So why 100K? It's stability, not wealth. It creates a buffer between you and chaos. Basic threats feel contained. You can absorb a hit without losing traction, and your prefrontal cortex can finally idle lower. When your brain stops bracing, better decisions become the default, setting up how the same $900 surprise can be a crisis for one person and barely a speed bump for another. Which brings us to the real-world shift from disaster to inconvenience, the tangible effects of having a 6-figure cushion and what it changes day to day. The same $900 emergency can either blow up your week or barely register. What flips that outcome isn't luck. It's the cushion behind you that turns chaos into a nuisance and lets you move on without damage. That stability protects the basics. A broken appliance gets fixed, a car repair gets scheduled, and a short gap between paychecks becomes inconvenient, not catastrophic. The foundation feels solid enough not to crumble. Let's turn 100K into something concrete. It isn't a trophy. It's a set of buffers that absorb volatility. It's also proof of progress. The habits are working. You've got an emergency fund that covers months of living costs, room between your debts and their limits, and an investment base that quietly replenishes what you spend. Each piece takes a sting out of surprises by giving you time, options, and a way to replace cash without scrambling. A lot of people treat six figures like a milestone for bragging rights. It's not symbolic. It acts like functional insurance. When a bill hits, you don't reach for high-interest credit. When timing gets rough, you don't panic sell. The cushion carries the shock so your decisions stay rational instead of rushed. Break into the buckets. You hold 3 to 6 months of expenses in cash, so rent, food, and utilities are covered even if income pauses. High-interest balances are already gone, which means you're not bleeding 20% APR while dealing with a setback. The rest sits in a diversified core that grows over time and can be tapped thoughtfully if needed. The structure isn't fancy. It's designed to block the most expensive mistakes. Now take a job loss. With $100K, your first month is straightforward. Essential bills are paid from cash. Health insurance is handled on time. And you spend days on targeted applications, not frantic interviews. Month 2. You line up contract work or negotiate severance terms with less pressure. Month 3. You hold out for a role that fits. You push for a signing bonus and you reject lowball offers. With $5K, Month 1 drains fast. Minimum payments, late fees, and rides to interviews eat the buffer. Month 2, you accept the first offer, even if it underpays, because the alternative is debt that snowballs. The difference is agency, and that compounds long after you're re-employed. And the emotional payoff is real. The late nights worrying about bills get replaced with quiet confidence that you'll be okay no matter what happens next. Here's what the data in our research points to. A cash buffer cuts reliance on high-interest borrowing, so you can skip credit cards and payday loans when costs pop up. That alone preserves progress toward your goals and prevents setbacks from turning into debt spirals. When you avoid late fees and punitive interest, your take-home money stretches further without a raise, and more of each paycheck stays yours instead of leaking out in penalties. This is margin for error in action. Small overspends don't snowball. A delayed reimbursement doesn't trigger a domino of overdrafts. Even a temporary market dip is noise rather than a threat to your plan. And once the floor feels steady, something else starts to happen in the background. Your money begins to pull its own weight, and the gains show up without you clocking extra hours. Which is where compounding starts to show up and money begins to work while you sleep. There's a point where your portfolio adds more in a year than your side hustle, but that truly self-generating phase lands closer to a larger base. At $100,000, the story is different and still powerful. This is the level where returns become visible enough to reinforce your habits and accelerate what comes next. From here, your money begins to participate in the effort. Let's break it down. With a $100,000 base, normal market returns in the 5 to 8% range translate to $5,000 to $8,000 in a year without you doing anything new. That's a vacation, a laptop upgrade, or a month of rent. The growth becomes visible in dollars you recognize, not just in percentages on a statement. You don't have to stretch to feel it. You let time do what time does, and the results finally register. Why do so many people stall before this point? Early investing feels slow because you've been building on fragile ground. Every dollar had a job, and setbacks taxed your bandwidth. Put 10 grand into the market at 7% and you'll see $700 after a year. That's nice, but it doesn't change your week. Now compare that to $100,000 at the same rate. That's $7,000, and suddenly the math starts closing real gaps. A goal that felt distant gets closer by a chunk that matters to your life right now. Here's the contrast that helps it click. At $10,000, a 7% year looks like a small line item. At $100,000, the same percentage equals a meaningful, recurring addition. This difference accelerates timelines. Down payments, student loan payoffs, or retirement targets move faster because the base is finally doing noticeable work. And as that base grows, toward $500,000 and beyond, the compounding becomes unmistakably self-generating. At that scale, even a plain 6 to 8% year produces $30,000 to $40,000 of gain without new effort. That's the moment many people describe as money acting like a quiet employee. Now run a simple 2-year stretch. You put in no new contributions for 12 months. Year 1, the market wiggles. Maybe it's down 4% mid-year, then up 9% by year end. Your $100,000 finishes around $107,000. Year 2 starts bumpy again, but dividends land, the index recovers, and you end up around $113,000 to $116,000 depending on the path. Along the way, the swings feel louder because the dollar amounts are bigger, yet the net progress still climbs. You're ahead, even though you didn't add a dime. This aligns with long-run patterns in broad index funds, where returns cluster around mid-single to high single digits over time, with normal bumps up and down in the short term. Dividend yields add a steady drip that keeps contributing even when prices chop sideways. You're not guessing which stock pops. You're letting the base compound. There's also a psychological shift. When the gains cover a real expense you recognize, patience gets easier. You feel less urge to tinker, chase headlines, or overtrade. You start caring more about fees, taxes, and staying invested than about timing the perfect buy. The habit change follows naturally. Automate contributions, keep turnover low, and protect your time in the market. You simplify choices and let scale do the heavy lifting. So the question becomes, if compounding gets clearer with a solid base, what's the fastest, low-stress way to build that first 6 figures and lock these habits in? So let's talk about the fastest path to that first 6 figures. The systems that beat willpower and keep you moving even when motivation dips. Most people chase raises. The faster route to 100K is often a system you set once and forget. You make a few decisions up front, then let the process run while you live your life. That's the point. Reliable beats heroic. Years of sacrifice add up, cutting expenses, resisting impulses, learning discipline. And a simple structure makes those habits easier to sustain when your energy isn't perfect. Here's the clean plan. Automate contributions so money moves out of checking on payday and into the right buckets without you voting on it each month. Funnel dollars toward eliminating expensive consumer debt and into broad, low-cost investments. Keep fixed costs lean, housing, transport, and subscriptions, so your savings rate isn't at the mercy of every small decision. This setup limits the number of choices you face when you're tired or stressed, which is when most budgets crack. The traps are predictable. Lifestyle creep nibbles away your margin every time income rises. Scattered goals dilute progress and leave you with half-finished buckets that never compound. Inconsistent contributions break the flywheel, forcing you to ramp back up again and again. A system blocks those leaks by removing decisions you'd otherwise revisit under pressure and by standardizing your routine so you don't have to rely on willpower. Let's talk principles instead of perfect math. Consistency beats intensity. Automate contributions, prioritize wiping out costly revolving balances, and maintain steady, predictable saving habits. When a payment disappears, redirect it immediately rather than letting it drift into spending. Keep investments simple, diversified, and fee-aware so you don't burn time or attention chasing hot tips. The key is turning a slow grind into momentum, letting a repeatable process carry most of the weight while you focus on work and life. A high-level example looks like this. Your paycheck lands, a fixed percentage routes to tax-advantaged accounts, a set amount hits a brokerage, and any remaining surplus attacks the most expensive debt until it's gone, then rolls into investing. You don't debate it each month, you just let the system run. Over time, the amounts grow, the routine feels normal, and progress compounds. Not only financially, but cognitively, because you're not burning bandwidth on constant money decisions. Why does this work? The big advantage of a systematic approach is that it turns money management into a routine. Automation and structure reduce mental load and emotional friction, so you reach $100,000 faster than by relying on willpower or sporadic effort. You're protecting your focus and buying back calm. Exactly what your brain needs to stay out of scarcity mode. Protect your energy while you grind. Set a fun budget you actually use. Do a brief money check-in every quarter. Add automatic escalation after raises. Run a simple debt payoff sequence for high-cost balances and keep investments in broadly diversified low-fee funds. As the system starts to work, the next challenge isn't effort. It's keeping fear quiet so progress doesn't get derailed when conditions change. That's where guardrails come in. Let's shift from setup to protection, locking in the mindset shift with guardrails that keep fear quiet. Hitting 100K helps, but keeping your brain calm requires guardrails. The number gives you room. The rules keep it. Today, we'll set simple rails so old habits don't sneak back when markets wobble or when your income jumps. After 6 figures, new risks show up. Overconfidence makes upgrades feel harmless. Lifestyle creep hides inside small subscriptions, nicer leases, and just this once travel. Then there's anxious tinkering during dips, switching funds, pausing contributions, or chasing hot tips because red numbers feel urgent. The danger isn't one mistake. It's many small ones that erode the cushion you worked for. Here's the paradox. More money adds new fears. Losing it, missing the next rally, or locking into the wrong plan. You start second-guessing the very system that got you here. That's why you need a written operating system you can follow when emotions spike. Let's lay it out. First, write a 1-page investment policy. Target allocation, funds you use, rebalancing bands, contribution dates, and what events would trigger a change. Keep it boring and clear. Its job is to reduce knee-jerk decisions by shifting you from reacting to creating. The core psychological move that comes with stability. Second, automate contributions on payday so the system moves money before you do. Third, set emergency fund rules. Minimum balance, where it sits, and exactly how you refill it after a withdrawal. Fourth, create a drawdown plan for large buys. Define the timeline, the account to use, and a cap on how much you'll sell in a single month. The goal is fewer decisions when stress rises. Now run the playbook during a 15% market drop. You make no allocation changes. If stocks drift 5 percentage points beyond your target, you rebalance back with new cash or by trimming winners. You pause any big discretionary purchase for 30 days, but you keep automated contributions steady. You review your written plan, not the headlines, and you move on. This approach lines up with what long-term investing favors: steady buying over time, periodic rebalancing to control risk, and fewer reactive moves. A written plan reduces knee-jerk choices because you've already answered the hard questions in calm conditions. Use your breathing room on purpose. Add a values filter to spending. Does this improve health, relationships, or learning? If not, it waits. Let money become a tool for alignment so your outer life matches your inner values. Book time for sleep, exercise, and skill building the same way you schedule transfers. Money should support the life you want, not create busy work. Add accountability to keep drift in check. Hold a quarterly money meeting, even if it's just you and a notepad. Scan fees, confirm your allocation, and review a short red flag list: car leases, buy now, pay later, variable rate debt, and high fee products. If one shows up, you slow down and get a second opinion. With these guardrails, your calm becomes durable. 100K turns into a floor you stand on, not a ceiling you fear breaking. The calm confidence that you'll be okay no matter what happens next. And from that state, fear turns into patience and emergencies turn into manageable tasks, setting up the final takeaway. So here's where that brings us. 100K isn't status. It's a psychological reset that helps you stop reacting and start choosing. That shift is the real win. Take a moment to define your personal money system today. Set clear rules for your accounts, savings, investment mix, rebalancing approach, and the floor for your emergency fund. Automate the next transfer when you're ready and let the structure carry you. Then watch for the moment your investments add more than you do. That's your signal the flywheel is working. In the next video, we map the exact tipping point where that momentum takes over and the steps to reach it sooner.